Hey everyone, you're tuning into another episode of Startup Savants. I'm Annaka.
And I'm Ethan.
If you're a returning listener, welcome back. And if you're new, this podcast is about the stories behind startups, the founders who run them, and the problems they're solving. This episode, we're joined by Frida Leibowitz and Rachel Lauren, just two of the founders of Debbie, a fintech startup that is changing the way consumers pay off debt with an innovative rewards-based system. I had a lot of fun with this conversation. We talked about everything from changing consumer behavior to TikTok, and then back to giving the power back to the people to change their financial situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking to these two ladies was a blast. We covered creating buzz before launch, which is so important. And we also talked about their pre-seed round of $1.2 million. So let's just stop stalling and get right into the episode. All right, jumping right in. Tell us a little bit about the story behind Debbie, its mission, and how you got started.
Sure, I can get started on that. As all good founding stories go, this one came directly from personal struggle. For me, debt was a theme in my childhood ever since I could remember myself. I grew up in a family that was immigrant, non-college educated, single parent, and that was a perfect recipe for having very little access to financial literacy, and falling pretty deep into the American debt cycle, that actually affects about 40% of American families. The reason why I call this American is because I think in the US, there's actually a lot more access to credit than in most other places in the world. And while that could be a wonderful thing, it can also really hurt consumers who don't understand how to take on the right kind of debt, how much debt really costs, and all those things, right? So if every time you walk into Walmart and you're offered, 20% off to get the credit card, it can be very harmful to consumers who don't understand what it means to put everything on credit cards. So that was my family story growing up, always sort of in and out of the debt cycle, paying really, really high costs, for basic items like cars, like, anything needed to sort of sustain a normal life. And because of that, we were really barred from financial security. And it's interesting because for me, as an adult, even though I was super lucky, I ended up getting a scholarship to go to NYU with Rachel. And I went to study finance out of all things. Personal finance was still not something that was talked about outside the house. So, I was able to build like DCF models and banking and do all these things, but I had no idea that I had to pay my statement balance in full at the end of the month. In my family, if you paid more than the minimum, you were doing amazing, right? And so I ended up racking up $15,000 in credit card debt by the time I was 20 years old, an average interest rate of like 25%. And I was really just drowning in interest at that point. I was a student working a part-time job of like making maybe like $25K to $30K a year and paying $4,000 in interest. That's just interest without even like dipping into the principal at all. And so at that point, I approached the sort of debt freedom market for the first time as a borrower. And I was trying to figure out like what solutions exist out here. How do I get myself out of this situation? And, I tried a whole bunch of things. I tried to do like balance transfers and a whole bunch of like little sort of fixes. And then I ended up going through with debt consolidation. So that's, also very well known as like the personal loan market. And I think personal did a very good job of targeting me. I started getting all these emails from Credit Karma, direct mail, telling me, hey, you are a perfect candidate for this, debt consolidation product. We're going to give you this loan. You're going to pay off all of your credit cards. And then you're going to just pay these fixed, very manageable monthly payments for 3 years. And most importantly, we're going to reduce your APR by like half. Right. And that was an amazing pitch to me as a consumer. I was like, this is wonderful. This is going to really set me on a path to debt freedom. And I ended up taking out one of these loans with Lending Club, which was one of the pioneers in this space. And I had a really great initial experience. I think everything leading up to origination was like really smooth, entirely digital. And I've talked to a soul, eliminated a lot of the shame, really eliminated a lot of the stigma around it. And so I really loved that experience. And then, shortly after I had that experience, I actually ended up joining Marcus to work on their personal product, because I was super excited about it. And I thought this product had a lot of potential. And I really wanted to go, build that. And I think really after, going through my own debt consolidation journey and being also at the same time sitting in the lender's seat, I got to see where the shortcomings of not just this specific product, but just the debt freedom market in general. And that really expressed itself in sort of two ways. One, I got to see that more than half of the borrowers were going back into credit card debt within less than a year. So the success rates were super low for a lot of these, for the debt products. And two, the borrowers who were improving, who were getting better, they were having a super hard time, like getting better, better treatment from the institutions that they were dealing with. And so they just started hopping around, and constantly trying to find like new rates, new solutions, other things. And yeah, that was really the backstory for Debbie. And that's when I started venting to Rachel, who was, and still is, my roommate. So we were just sitting together during COVID in our little New York City apartment, and I would just vent to her all day about the things that I was seeing, my experience, my family's experience. And that's how we started talking about Debbie. Hope I answered all of your questions.
Absolutely.
There.
Yeah. So you guys are roommates.
We are roommates. We've been roommates. Funny, like we just had to fill out one of like our applications for a state lending license, and Rachel just copy pasted our address history.
Nice.
Like, oh, there we go. We've been roommates for a while.
So Rachel, do you feel like she summed up that history pretty well?
I think she summed up the history pretty well. There's more to it though, I think, in terms of how we started thinking about like why, Debbie and why us and what does that solution actually look like? And I think, that kind of comes from my background. So, I spent the last couple of years working in venture capital at BDMI, which is a corporate venture fund, which is fairly generalist, but I was focused more so on fintech and software. And so I was seeing a lot of consumer fintech cross my desk, and it's a very, very saturated market. It's very hard to kind of stand out. And when we looked at the debt payoff market specifically, we tried to understand, why is this a problem that hasn't been solved yet? And who out there, what are the different approaches that people have taken to try to solve it? And we saw one of two. One was throwing a bunch of cash at the problem, which is what sort of the personal lending industry has done. You see that Cash Advance is doing this now. It's sort of blowing up. Here's a $300, $400 spot. The problem with that is, obviously just cash alone is not really going to get you, it's not really going to solve that habit problem if it is spending related. And so that sort of ties back to what Frida said, what she saw inside Marcus and in the industry as a whole. On the other hand, in terms of the other approaches, we're starting to see companies that are sort of offering this, what we call the fancy schmancy algorithm, that's going to determine the best, fastest, cheapest way for you to pay off your credit card. So you plug in all your credit cards and it kind of automatically kind of decides how to pay it off for you. Now, the issue with that is sort of the same thing, right? It's making your life easier, but at the same time, it's not stopping you or incentivizing you from not spending on your credit cards more. In fact, it's in their best interest for you to continue to spend on your credit cards because then you will continue to need their product. And so neither approach really targets the underlying root cause of why folks get into credit card debt or just, spending related debt in the first place. And that's when we realized we needed to take an entirely different approach to the problem that was more sort of incentives focused, more rewards focused. And so that's when we decided to build the rewards platform for debt payoff. We take, a Noom style approach. We look to the weight loss industry as a really good example of a place where people, maybe have high motivation when they kind of see that trigger of, I want to lose weight, but then they'll rebound, after trying a bajillion diets. The same thing happens in the debt payoff and sort of financial wellness space. People will have that high, hit of motivation. They'll maybe kind of go on what we call a financial diet. They'll cut their spending, but it's not sustainable. And they'll sort of bounce back into debt. And so we want to take a new approach. We think they've done an amazing job in the weight loss space to actually enact, long-term sustainable behavioral change. We want to do the same thing for debt payoff.
Gotcha. So in that story, I heard a lot of words like freedom, journey, shame, habits. What I didn't hear a lot of was spreadsheet and numbers and that sort of thing. So is it safe to say that you're really taking a really more personable approach to solving this issue than to just, find the right numbers for somebody that they can slot into?
Yeah, very happy you said that, because that was actually one of our intentions. We like to think of ourselves as a consumer product first, financial product second, because exactly of that thing. And I think one of the things that underlying everything that Rachel was describing, right, the what we see today in the fintech space is a very spreadsheet approach. the issue with that is that completely disregards all the emotions and all of the human element really in it, right? And as humans, we're not necessarily rational. We don't necessarily make decisions that are best for us all the time. We everything, especially in the debt payoff space, and when it comes to our finances, most of it's driven by emotion. And so we really decided to focus on that. And by the way, again, going back to like the weight loss space, I think the reason why Noom did so well is because they speak to that, right? They speak to like why we form the habits that we do, and going back to the root causes of it, right? Not just explaining to you, oh, this is how much calories a cookie has, and that's why you shouldn't eat it.
Right.
So that's kind of
they're very focused on behavior change.
Yeah, I want to build on top of that also and say, I think the reason why most fintechs or just, financial companies in the past have been so kind of numbers focused is because most of the people that have been building these products have never been on the other side of the aisle, right? They've never actually experienced what life is like for, the whatever percentage of people that are in debt. And so I think that's what makes our story so strong as well, is that, we have experienced that. We do know what it feels like. And so we understand kind of the journey that folks go through when it comes to debt payoff. And I think our users understand that too. I think that resonates a lot with them.
Gotcha. So how did you've mentioned Noom a couple of times. Are they really kind of the model that you're going after, or what other kinds of research did you do? How did you find this model? And how did you really work to develop this direction to the solution?
Yeah, I think it started like, kind of very basic. We, at the very beginning, like when I started seeing, my own personal experience, the issues that I was facing and the things that I was seeing in the industry, we just decided to talk to other people and see if they had the same issue or what other issues they had. And so we really started by joining a ton of Facebook communities, Instagram communities, a little bit on TikTok, right? That kind of formed, and a lot of them blew up over COVID actually. And so there's a lot of communities that were forming around financial wellness, debt payoff, all these things. And people started sharing their stories, talking about it to each other, trying to get help. People are creating Instagram accounts just to track their debt payoff journey. So they'll post every single month, like, here's my current debt, here's what my goals are for the month. Or like, oh, they'll post, I slipped up. And then like, they'll just start to get that support. So we really ingrained ourselves in those communities. And we listened first. We didn't come with any solutions. We didn't come with any, we had some ideas obviously in the back of our head, but we tried to keep as much of that to ourselves and just really understand like what are people going through. We also ended up running a series of support groups via Zoom, also during the pandemic, which was really good because people were home and so they had more time for us. And we let that be very natural. Like we kind of let it go how it went. We participated as participants, like strictly, not as like moderators or anything like that. Like for every question that we asked, everybody answered, including us. We had it like that. We even had one that was led by, a certified financial planner. And again, the idea was to first be like a fly on the wall and really observe. And I think that's what led us to where we got to. And the weight loss analogy actually, like, that just came pretty naturally. Like, I don't remember when it was the first time that we had it, but at some point someone made an analogy or like one of us saw it and we just it clicked. And since then, it's actually interesting to see that so many times when we have conversations, we don't even mention it and somebody else will. They'll be like, this sounds exactly like, the weight loss process. So, yeah, that was the journey. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Rachel.
Yeah, I think what we sort of realized initially when we started the business, we tried to think about, how do we reward the people who self-select as better users? We want to help the people who are sort of on the margins who want to change, but maybe struggle. But we felt like maybe we didn't have the skills or enough knowledge to really enact behavioral change. And that was the thing that investors were like, you're never going to change people. People are who they are and they will never be different. But at the same time, we realized the biggest issue is what Frida mentioned, what she pointed out, is that rebound phenomenon, right? Of people that have the motivation, that have the intent. But at the end of the day, there's something that stands in their way, whether that's an unexpected expense or just the habits that they've formed over the years. And so when we looked around to see which companies have actually been able to solve that problem, Noom was really just the one that stood out. And to the point where I was on LinkedIn like every day trying to find someone from Noom in a product capacity to help us, which eventually we found. The director of product and growth at Noom is an advisor of ours. And he has a PhD in psychology. He's been amazing. His name's Shane Blackman. But he's been helping us build the product and the curriculum. And that's been in a crazy unlock for us.
That's it. And looking at kind of user and consumer psychology is almost, I'm almost in disbelief that like we're just now getting to this point where studying consumer behavior is influencing business practice. And it's like, wait, why haven't we done this yet? But going back to those support groups, because I'm a support group junkie, I love them. What impact did that really have, not only on the users, but on your business going forward from here?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We came into it with like very little like expectations of ourselves, of anybody. We kind of was like a very chill thing. We're just like, let's just get together and talk about life and talk about, and get support from each other. I think for the users, it was, some sort of like accountability. Definitely the feeling. One of the other important things is feeling like other people are also in the same boat. Mm-hmm. Like we said, there's a lot of shame associated with debt. And people have a really hard time talking about it. Like, even for myself, it's actually interesting. Like, most of my friends at NYU had no idea that I was in this kind of debt. Even when I was already working at Goldman, and like, I was still in debt then, I was paying it off. Most people that I work with had no idea because I was really embarrassed to talk about it.
Yeah.
And people are looking for ways to like first identify like, okay, other people are like me, and then they feel comfortable talking. Like, once they know, okay, this is a safe space. Like, everyone else understands where I'm at and aren't going to judge me for being in this place. So I think that was like a huge benefit to the users. And what it helped us do is, as soon as you create a safe space like that, people feel comfortable really telling you what's going on, really telling you like why they struggled and what can help them most. And they're just more honest. And that's really what we wanted. We wanted people's honesty. And like Rachel mentioned before, I think the fact that we were built for borrowers by borrowers, and that we ourselves have experienced this issue also helps us like hear, like it helps users and open up to us in a different way. So that, I think that part was like super, super strong for us.
Yeah, I think it definitely, it helped us kind of hone in on some messaging around sort of normalizing talking about debt and sort of financial wellness and health. I think there's been a big movement around mental health that hasn't really trickled into other areas like financial health. And a lot of that is, people want to show that they're successful. A lot of people's brands are sort of built on spending and very conspicuous spending. And so going and telling someone, hey, talk about your financial struggles, it's very, very challenging. But I do think that there will be a reckoning the same way there was, you had all these people come out and say, hey, I want to talk about my mental health today, even though normally I make funny videos and kind of entertain you. And I see that in feedback sessions that I have. People will come on the call and like, they're not there to give you feedback on the app, though that's, I try to weed that out of them. They're there to talk, to vent to me and tell me about all their problems and, their credit score issues and all the stuff, all the collections agencies that are coming after them. Like, that's what I'm spending half of my like user feedback sessions on, which is kind of funny. That's not really the point of them. But, it's, I wouldn't say it's fun, but like, it's really heartwarming to me that like people are so willing to kind of sit down and open up to us. To total strangers. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you said kind of a magic word for me associated with finances and debt, and that word is shame. And there's a lot of shame and guilt connected to debt, especially when it comes to credit cards. And it sounds like that's an issue and a perspective that you're really looking to change. Is that like a part of your overall strategy? Is there some of that like, what words am I looking for? Are those mantras that are getting built into the product?
Yeah. So if you look at we actually built a manifesto with 5 key principles that drive our business. And the very first principles is carrots, not sticks. I think that when you look at the debt space, right, it's full of sticks. If you don't make your payments on time, if your utilization is too high, you're going to get hit. Mm-hmm. If you do everything that you're supposed to do, it takes a very long time. Like, there's no immediate gratification, right? It takes a very long time to feel the benefit. And that's exactly why we decided we're going to be in the rewards business, right? We are going to be the ones providing those carrots. right? Positivity. So we're going to celebrate good behaviors rather than, right, kind of keep on punishing bad ones, which eventually, like if you look at this, again, going back to the behavioral psychology, punishments only work for so long, right? Eventually, like people just like build up a tolerance for it and they're just like, whatever, I'll just keep getting fees. I'm already used to this. Who cares? You know, whereas positive rewards, right? If you do it in the right way, that sort of like instant gratification, the feeling like, well, I'm doing good things, like that tends to have a much more effective impact over time.
Yeah. And we are building that directly into the curriculum. So when you look at like the first couple modules that we're building in, one of the first ones is called Positive Vibes Only. And then it sort of walks you through what is the actual tangible financial impact of shame, right? Shame leads to things like avoidance, which means I'm going to stop looking at my balances. I'm not going to, it's sort of this never ending cycle of, oh, I don't know how much I'm spending. I don't want to know how much I'm spending. I'm going to go keep spending because I don't know what's happening. And it's this never ending kind of loop.
I know that listeners can't see me just nodding along to everything y'all have been saying. Like, oh yeah, I've had days where I just haven't looked at my bank account and I know it's not good, but if I don't look at it, it can't get me, right?
Yeah.
So, and I read the manifesto and I loved it. Listeners, please go read it. But how does carrots not sticks? How does that set you apart from kind of the rest of the debt industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of like what I mentioned before, if you look today at the space, the only rewards that exist in the debt world are credit card rewards, and those reward you for spending more. There are very few companies that are creating like real, tangible, immediate rewards that are directly tied to an action that you do. Right, for positive behavior. There's things over time, like I said, there's companies like you'll feel good because your credit score will improve. You'll eventually get a higher credit line, but it is very hard to like, it's very different. Like when you miss a payment, you immediately see the late fee. The late fee is tied to the missed payment, right? It's very clear. This X leads to Y. With rewards, it's very hard, right? You don't even know what affects your credit score. You don't even know why the bank decides to give you a higher, credit line. You just kind of like do everything that you need to be doing. Kind of, you sort of know what you need to do, but you sort of don't. And then like you hope for the best, right? And with us, we want to make that same very clear connection. Like, right, their task is this, reward is this, in a very, very distinct way. And I think that really sets us apart, from the rest of the debt space.
All right, we're going to jump around a little bit. I want to go back to...
We got in deep there pretty quick.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Back to something that we haven't talked about yet, so it's not back to anything. You guys are based in Miami. Yes. Can you tell us what the tech scene is like there right now?
Yeah, Miami has been really cool for us. As you may have heard, there's been a huge exodus from New York, from San Francisco to Miami. And the interesting thing is, during the pandemic, at least, people were coming there because of freedom, because literally you didn't need to wear masks. The pandemic didn't exist there. You could do whatever you wanted. But I think people stayed because of this amazing community that formed, and the type of people that came there. So I think the cool thing is that you're getting like the best of both worlds in a way, because you're getting like the ambition and the work ethic that you have like in the New York and the South of the world. But you're also getting people like, people are self-selecting who are like more free thinking and want to sort of try something new and move somewhere and like, start a new thing. So I think that's been really cool. And we've been, it's interesting because like the tech scene is initially felt like it was very dominated by Web3. So every other company is doing NFTs, cryptos, sort of very, very cool things. Very like first world problems, which was very cool. And then I think after a little bit of time though, we were able to find other companies like us, that are working on standard Web 2 problems that we still need to solve, for the rest of folks who can't even, they can't even get to investing. They can't even get to regular things, right? Like we need to sort of help them first out of that debt cycle. So that's been really cool. And then the other part of it is I think now Miami's sort of in a perfect place where there is a critical mass. So there's enough companies, enough things to go around, but it's still tight knit. So after spending a little bit of time there, you start to get to know everybody, or at least you have a connection to anybody there. And the environment is very collaborative. Like anybody that you meet will be willing to connect you with whoever, help you with their network, offer you their office space, offer you, like events to go to, all these things. So overall, super positive experience. And I think something very special that like we're happy to be part of.
So you were both in New York and you chose Miami. You could have chosen anywhere in the world. You could have chosen Silicon Valley. You could have chosen SF. Is it over? Is it over in SF? Is everything just moving to Austin and Miami now? Is that what we're seeing?
So I think the movement from SF has been more harsh than the movement from New York. And I think that's for a few reasons. One is, and we talk to people in the Bay Area all the time. And what they tell us is that it's just gotten more dangerous. They're kind of scared. Our one of our service providers, their good friend, like literally had a violent attack, like in broad daylight. And
Wow.
we didn't have and so like he had to help her for like a week, and we weren't able to kind of get in contact with him. Like it was not good. And so it's not a good situation right now from like a safety perspective in certain areas in SF. And I think that's a big reason why people have left. And then the other thing is, going back to sort of the way that, the Miami tech scene has sort of evolved, is the kind of people that are looking for startup jobs. They're not, I think in the Bay Area, it's very much like, okay, let me find a Series A company that's going to give me significant equity and still pay me really well, because there's so many companies getting funded. And so it's not even that much of a risk that you're taking, right? A Series A company that just got funding, even if it dies, like there's a dime a dozen, and you're getting great equity. So it's you're really not taking that much of a risk. It's really more of a question of like, which one do I think will be the rocket ship? Whereas I think like in Miami, it is a risk, right? There aren't sort of a dime a dozen companies that you can sort of join if one of them fails in Miami. And so the people here are really looking for something that they're more aligned with from a mission perspective, that they're excited about in terms of the product, rather than who can offer them like the best comp package and benefits and, lunch on every day for the rest of the year or whatever it is.
Gotcha. So you two are both in Miami, but you've got a team in several other places on this globe. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So our third co-founder, Maxime, is in Austin. He did the other classic move. He moved from SF. He was in the Valley for a couple of years, and then he ended up moving to Austin during the pandemic. And then we have Matt. He's in LA. And then we have our engineering team is in Argentina. Our designer is somewhere else in Florida, and our awesome intern is actually in Charleston. So it's been really cool to kind of have like this very this very spread out team. But I actually think we started off as an all remote company to begin with. So that's how we built our identity. And we really had to like get creative and find ways to get to know each other. And like, it's like little things. I think it's things like every time we have a meeting, like most of the time we'll spend at least like the first 5 to 10 minutes talking about like non-work related things. So all the things that you would be talking about at the coffee machine, like, to somebody else, or like during your lunch or things like that, we definitely try to do that. And then we also do create a good amount of meetings that are just meant for hanging out. Like, so we have happy hours, we have things like that. And I know it's really tough, because I remember also being an employee before, and like sometimes you're like, oh, I have to go to this happy hour, I'd rather have my own time. So we really try to make it relevant, and find ways to like engage the team. And I think at the end of the day, we just like each other also. I think that's important. I don't know. I hope I get to say that. No, Matt, you'll tell me later if you agree. But yeah, I think that part's important too. I think picking the team and picking people that like you actually enjoy hanging out with, even remotely, like that you would take time out of your day to go to happy hour with on Zoom. That's really important.
Right. And it sounds like,
and we do have a somewhat, larger budget, I guess, to like travel to each other. So the money that we spend on rent and the office space, we would now spend on like actually going to meet each other in person, whether that's in Austin, Miami, wherever.
That's great. Yeah. It's really, I've heard that a bunch of times, is that even if you have a fully distributed team, it's important to everyone to get together, just every once in a while. And it really helps with the just understanding who a person is. We're all on Zoom all day long. And, I know what Annaka's face looks like. But when we're together in this office, by gosh, it's just the best.
Oh, you're such a cheeseball. I do love that your team all has kind of chosen southern locations. Meanwhile, we're in Michigan. I'm like, it snowed last week. Like,
they picked the sun over anything else.
I remember Michigan in the winter.
Yeah, it's something I'm going to try to forget. All right. Jumping around again, what is customer discovery? And do you recommend this type of research approach for other founders?
I think it maybe goes back a little bit to what we were talking about before, right? Like the first step that we took before we built the product. And I do think, I think customer discovery is important for every business. At least from what I've seen, I haven't found one that doesn't need it. And I would actually even say you should do customer discovery before you have a solution, or at the very least, keep your solution out of it. Like first try to figure out, just find the problem, right? Like the customer discovery, it's really important to figure out what the actual problem that you're solving is. And then from there, or the set of problems, in our case, it's definitely a set of problems. It's not all like all debt isn't equal at all. And from there, figure out like slowly, right? Like build up your way into like what might be a potential solution. And you have to pick the problems you want to deal with. You can't do all of them, not all at once. So yeah, I would say like that for us was super important. And that's the first thing we did. It started off like, that's really how our business started. Like it was me and Rachel sitting in our apartment without like that much else to do because it was the pandemic. And we were just like, okay, we have these issues. Let's just like for fun, sit on Facebook and start just like trolling the internet, like talking to people, seeing what they're doing, and like talking, like seeing what's up, seeing what, like talking about our stories, hearing other people's stories. And that I think that definitely helped us get to where we got to today.
Yeah. And I tell Frida, we talk about this all the time, that like, it's important to have a vision for the business, but at the same time, like, I think we're married to the problem, not necessarily the solution, right? Like we have ideas of what the solution might be, but as we continue along in the business, if we see that something we've tried isn't working, then we try something else, right? Like whether that's a change in the business model, a change in the product itself. I think it's important to be open to different solutions within a certain kind of bracket, in order to get to that right one. If you really do care about the problem, right?
If you really care about the problem. The angels are singing in my brain right now because it's like you can identify a problem and you can be like, that's the problem, but oops. That sounds like a you thing and not a me thing. You see that kind of conversation quite often, unfortunately. So talking about customer discovery, a lot of times in user experience and marketing, we talk about personas. And I think based on our conversation so far, we have an idea of who your user is, who your kind of market is, and the way that you want to speak to them. How did you go about designing your user experience and designing your platform with your user in mind?
Yeah. So it started. I'll jump into this one. I think actually it started kind of funny the way that we came into our personas, because I think we had an idea of who they might be initially, which was sort of, young folks, millennials, sort of age, 24 to 35, either people who've just graduated kind of in their first jobs, now finally have spending money or maybe getting themselves into trouble, to people who have families looking to buy a home, spending money on their kids and things like that. And so we had different kind of subgroups within that. Now that was sort of, we were thinking about, students who were maybe about to graduate as a demographic. So we had those ideas. And then I think we started really, really broad with the messaging. Like the initial messaging that we went out with to folks was get paid to pay off your debt. That was super, super broad. was not specifically targeted at any one person. I think the branding at the time was also like pretty vague. It wasn't like particularly millennial or Gen Z or kind of in any direction. And then, we started seeing who came in, right? Who were the people that were attracted to the initial messaging and who were sort of like shaping up to be our demographic. And I think there was some overlap, and then there were some surprises. Mm-hmm. So the overlap is, we definitely got some of that kind of younger folks, 25 to 35. We thought we would get more women, given the name is sort of, Debbie.
Yeah.
We thought it would be sort of predominantly women. In fact, we thought we would get sort of, young moms. We thought we might get some students. And actually what we ended up getting was some of that, most of that. But then we also got a lot of men who were looking for side hustles. We're looking to pay off debt faster and sort of looking for a motivator. Some lower income folks as well. And so those were demographics that we weren't necessarily expecting that we ended up getting. And then we decided to kind of make sure the branding fit within that. The branding and sort of the user experience, we sort of, tried to make it more gender neutral, at least the color palette, the fonts, all of that to make it kind of more, to fit both kind of masculine and feminine.
Yeah, bridging the gap is the gender divide is always a little bit hard. It's like, can you make it soft and masculine at the same time? Yes, you can. But yeah, it's an interesting approach, and congratulations on getting kind of a breadth of a market there, because that's not easy to do. And speaking of your platform currently as it sits, you have over 11,000 people when I checked, kind of ready to join. How did you make that happen? That's a lot of people.
It's all Rachel, now Rachel and Matt.
Yeah.
She started.
So I have no prior marketing experience. So I kind of just went in, was like, all right, let's throw things at a wall and see what sticks. And I got a lot of help from a former portfolio company of ours when I was at BDMI, which is Extra, that has done fantastically well. They're building a debit card that builds your credit score. And so I reached out to Max and was like, hey, you guys grew to like 100,000 paying subscribers within like a year. What's your secret? What did you do? And he basically, and a lot of folks in the fintech space, particularly investors, were pushing us to find some sort of interesting acquisition channel, some other distribution model, yada, 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 because it is such a saturated market. And I was like, what did you do? Did you have some secret special thing that you did? And his answer boiled down to find the message that works, find the message that converts, and just push money into that. And that's what they did. And it worked really well for them. And that was the strategy we decided to take. And that's where that messaging that I mentioned before of get paid to pay off your debt sort of came from. We made it very clear, very simple. This is the value prop. People understood it and people came. On top of that, I made a lot of silly videos of myself for TikToks and Reels, which ended up, some of them did better than others. Fixed, the branding a little bit, made it more fun, made it more personable, going back to the idea of like the human approach, right? Mm-hmm. We wanted to give Debbie a face. We wanted to give the brand a face. And so that was really important to me, from a brand perspective. So yeah, I think the combination of all of those things has been super helpful. That, and also, building alongside the user. So we built a customer advisory board that's sort of separate from our general kind of business advisory board. That's made up of, influencers in the space and sort of regular users. They're first eyes on screens. So when we kind of develop the product, we show them, we get their feedback. Same thing with the messaging, with the branding, advertising, everything. And so they've been pretty instrumental, I think, in getting the message across as well.
Fun fact, Ethan and I are also on TikTok now.
Oh, boy.
It's for all of
Give
those.
us some tips.
No, we're the one that needs the tips.
We need tips, yeah.
You guys should link up with Matt. Matt's our rising TikTok star.
It's like
his TikTok video that we had like over April Fool's Day got 36,000 views.
That's
Yeah.
it. I'm like, y'all got any tips in there? I don't know how to be like, I can talk to you and have a conversation, but as soon as you turn the camera on me, I'm like, I'm not funny. I don't know why why you're focused on me. So
They keep asking me to dance.
You just gotta.
I'm like, I'm not
you
on.
Just gotta, yeah. You just gotta shake your butt.
Oh, you don't even know the kinds of things we did. Rachel, you don't know what kind of things Rachel made me do. I was like, I did not know this was part of the job. But at one point, Rachel like had commissioned a custom Debbie plushie. So it's a plushie in the like looks like Debbie. And then she put it on like a mop so that we can like, do all these animations. And at some point, like I was holding a mop with Debbie plushie and Rachel's doing some dance video with it. And I was like, I did not know that this was part of building a startup. But it's fun. You gotta just like kind of let loose, have fun with it. Just be ready to try anything.
I was definitely inspired by Duolingo. So I think they've done an awesome job. I did not want to spend thousands of dollars on like a mascot costume.
Right.
So ended up just like spending $70 on like a little plushie on Etsy. But I think eventually we'll get there. Eventually we'll upgrade to like a better, a better mascot, whether that's a costume or something else. But I think that,
if you don't have anyone willing to run around in it, give me a call. I will fly down to Miami and do dumb things in the mascot costume.
Well, see, that's how we get you on camera. We just have to put you in a suit.
Yeah, anything.
Yeah.
I'm sure the podcast team is sick of me talking about Duolingo, but their marketing team all deserve awards. They're amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now I just lost the thought that was there is now gone and there's no getting it back.
All right, I've got one. Who's Debbie? We keep hearing that Debbie is a person, and this, you've named your company after her. Who is Debbie?
Who is Debbie? Debbie, think of Debbie, like the persona is like, you're cool, young, and that like, went through her own wild phases, spent a bunch, got into debt, but like made her way out of it and is now super successful and kind of gets you and is on your side, but also has like some good knowledge and, is sort of already like familiar and can help you out. In terms of the name, it was really important for us to have a woman's name. We were kind of just like, for me, it was like a little bit like, we had Marcus, Dave, Albert. We wanted to like have a woman's name. And then it was kind of like a little play on words, like Debbie. And my sister's name is Debbie. Rachel's mom's name is Dora, which is also Anna Debbie. So we kind of like, it's kind of approachable. It's kind of cool. Like it works. And that's it. That's how we chose it. I think, it was like one of those like early decisions that we made that kind of just made sense and we stuck with it.
Did you ever walk out of a VC meeting where they turned you down and you just said, we can't help you, you're a Debbie Downer?
Oh my God.
That is a great line. I am definitely going to use that.
Well, I'm glad.
I don't know how we didn't think about it, but wow.
Because that line is just how I lost my job right now.
Oh. No, I love that. Oh my God, that's going to become like my little, like my response email to like no's from VCs, like, you're a Debbie Downer.
Such a Debbie. I think it's actually so funny because I think about our company all the time. We talk about positivity and Debbie Downer is like such a known thing. And so we're just,
all right, Rachel,
totally
Matt, that's got to be our next TikTok is like listing all of our Debbie Downer. We did like one TikTok where we showed like, we like crossed out the names and we showed like all of our rejection emails that we went through when we were facing. And now we could do one like that with like all the Debbie Downers. That was funny.
Awesome. Glad I can be of assistance. My bill's in the mail.
You're hired.
Great. Ethan and I just got jobs.
I don't think it was both of us. It was just
you have the
me.
mascot. Well, she's got the mascot.
Oh, yeah.
She'll do the mascot.
Oh, good.
You guys would be a great team.
Fantastic. All right. Michaela, sorry. We're out. That's our producer. All right. Let's get back into real life here. So you two are two of the three founders of Debbie. Can you tell us about your other founder and tell us how you built your team of founders? Yeah.
So, Rachel and I go way back. Like I mentioned, we went to NYU together and we we lived together on and off over the years. So we knew each other pretty well and we knew we wanted to start this together. We also knew that we were lacking certain skill sets and we wanted to find a technical co-founder. And it was very important for us to bring in a co-founder specifically, not just like a head of engineering. I think we looked through that option and we realized we wanted someone in it with us and we wanted to have like a complete like skill set within the co-founding team, that, you know, to sort of like de-risk the business and make sure that like we, you know, we're best set up for success. The journey to finding that third co-founder was very difficult. It's actually, I think it's even like doubly hard when there's two of us. So then we have to find a third. So we both have to really get along with that third person, and it has to be a really, really good fit. And that third person has to like both of us. And it took us months. It took us like a long time. And we tried lots of things. We were looking for in many different places. We ended up doing this like co-founder matching program that's run by one of the partners at Andreessen. We just signed up for it. It was like one of the many things we did. And ultimately, that's how we found Maxime, who is our third co-founder and is amazing. And I think there was a couple of things that helped us make that process successful. We did get some really good candidates. And I think because we lead with the mission and we were trying to draw people who are very mission driven, that was amazing. So it helped us get like a really good pool of candidates. But ultimately really was about finding that the sort of the two best of both worlds, right? Which is like Maxime also has an amazing background, amazing skill set. He has the experience. He's been in Silicon Valley. He worked at Earnest before. He spent, you know, years there and sort of has like really deep level experience. But at the same time, he's someone who's like actually fun to hang out with, like a person who we get along with, who we could just chit chat about anything. You know, really brings in like a good energy to the team. And one of the things that we ended up doing, like as part of the process, we actually put together a list of 40 questions that spanned anywhere from like, what do you do in your free time? What are your values? And would you sell the company for 100 million, 200 million, or, you know, like what's your price?
Yeah.
And we went through it. Each one of us filled it out independently of each other. And then we came together. We like compared our answers. We talked about it. We saw like where we, you know, kind of just to really see like how aligned we were and all those things. And that really, really helped. I think that made it like very easy to spot, like, you know, eventually with Maxime was very easy to spot like the how much we were aligned. And then with other folks, it was very easy to see the folks who were not aligned. Mm-hmm. So I think that was sort of the formula, which was not a very quick, it's no magic bullet. It was hard work. But it definitely turned out to be amazing.
How many people did you put through any sort of a process before you landed on Maxime?
Wow. Total, like that we had in the pipeline. What was it like? I mean, total applications was like we had at some point we were doing applications, but Maxime was a co-founder matching program. So it was different. Like we had to both select each other. Sure. But we also did like links. We did a LinkedIn job post. We did all these things. I think across everything, we probably had like over 300. Of those, I mean, you know, but it's just a number, like so many of them were not necessarily like relevant or whatever. Of those, we probably went through like a more in-depth process with like, I would say 30 to 40 candidates. And then the really like towards the end, it was like between probably like 3.
That's a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of time. Yeah. There's no such thing as a free lunch. That's
right.
what they say.
Well, it sounds like you found the right one. That's really great.
We did. I think with Maxime, I mean, also for me, Maxime, we hit it off right away because we were both, like I met him first. And so then I was like, I came to Rachel. I'm like, Rachel, I met the one that said like, we can shut down all the applications. I was I was just like praying. I'm like, please say yes. But yeah, we really connected. I think he also had like that entrepreneurial spirit because he actually like between Ernest and Debbie, he like, you know, had started something else with co-founders and he like really wanted to be part of something young and cared about that stuff. And then it also helped that we're both motorcycle riders. Hey. And so, yeah, we're like creating the next thing is going to be like a motorcycle team for Debbie. And we're going to put Rachel in a sidecar. Yes. But Matt joined us and he's also a motorcycle rider. So we're really going to do it. And then Rachel's going to be in a sidecar.
In the sidecar.
I feel no
one wants to volunteer yet. No. We're just going to try to convince her to also get a motorcycle license.
Yeah, I need to learn how to drive first. So let's start with that.
We'll work on it.
It's like it's the last adult thing that I don't know how to do. It's very embarrassing. I'm very ashamed of it.
Well, I can tell you if you move from state to state, you can just tell the new state that you have a motorcycle license and they'll be like, oh, okay. And they don't know how to read the old state's license anyway, so they just give it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a free way to get a motorcycle license. That was a story that has little relevance to anything.
Have you tried it? How do you know?
Yeah.
Sounds sketchy.
Yeah, I had one. I moved from Missouri to Michigan, and I had a motorcycle license, but the licenses looked
nice.
different. And so when I went to get my new license, they asked me, "What's this M?" And I said, "That's a motorcycle license." And they're like, "Oh, do you want to keep that?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah, it's the same thing with New York. New York also has like a DM. It means that you have no idea what it means.
Right.
So you're like, oh yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so when you go to get that Florida license, just be like, "Oh yeah, I rode motorcycles all the time."
Yeah. And
That's great.
How important was it that Maxime be specifically a tech co-founder? Is it that keeps coming around?
That was important. I mean, that was really the skill set. Like, I think it actually was really good. Like, Rachel and I have very different skill sets, so it was perfect. Like, we really complemented each other. But we needed the technical experience. I think that was definitely missing. Otherwise, it would be way too many cooks in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. Even now, it's like, we have to set very clear boundaries about like who owns what, to make it easier for us and to like make sure that we run things in a good way. But yeah, we wanted to make sure that we were like finding someone with a very complementary skill set to what we already have.
Yeah, that seems to be a recurring theme among founders that are not particularly technical. They're like, we needed to find the tech person that was going to watch our back and keep us accountable and get things done. And so, yay, tech founders, CTOs.
Yes. Yes.
Perfect.
Couldn't do this without them.
Exactly. All right, so let's get really honest here. What was it actually like getting from launch to now? Because I know it's not all unicorns and rainbows. What was give me the nitty gritty. What was it about?
Yeah. And I think, kind of like I mentioned, it's sort of like, to me, it was always frustrating before when like I would hear entrepreneurs talk and like, there'd be like 2 seconds about like all the challenges and then like an hour about this is amazing and here's how we got here and we raised money and all this stuff. So I do want to talk about all the things that went down before we raised money. And how we sort of got through that. And it was a long journey, right? Like some of it, like even before we had an idea, before anything, like it took a long time. And I think for Rachel and I specifically, like we were young. We were very early on in our careers. At the time, we did not have, rich parents or a nest egg or something that we were sort of able to rely on and just say like, let's just quit our jobs and go try something new. And so we had to be very methodical and really get to a place where we can jump and take a risk. And sort of in the beginning, what we did was when we started, after we did the market research and all this stuff, we're like, all right, let's get this on paper. Let's put together a deck. Let's just talk to people that we know. Let's see what they say. We put together a basic deck that if we looked at it today, we would probably cry because it was so ugly. And then we just like went around to people that we knew, friends initially, whatever. We're like, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? And then we started seeing like very positive traction. And slowly like people were like, let me introduce you to this person. Let me introduce you to that person. Maybe you should talk to that, and all that stuff. And that also was like a while. And there were definitely days when we worked on it more. And there were days when we worked on it less. It wasn't like, we were always doing this all the time. And we also had our full-time jobs still. And then at some point we realized, okay, we're going to have to make the jump, but how do we do that? Right. And I think this is where it's really important for us. It was really important for us, at least, to have like each other, because when you have a co-founder, right, you're not doing things alone. And so that actually helps. That gives leverage. So we ended up deciding is that, I would quit my job first. Rachel was going to stay at her job, keep making money, help pay the rent. Right. She was basically like bankrolling the business at the time, helping me out. And then we went from there and I was like, okay, I'm going to quit. I'm going to get started. I'm going to start building. I'm going to start figuring this out. And then she was obviously still helping out and doing everything part-time. And I think that jump was like, that was the most crucial thing. As soon as I said, that's it, like I am now leaving. I don't have a full-time income. I have Rachel to help me, but like that's limited. And I gave myself like I had a time limit. That's how much savings I had. I knew it was going to, run out eventually. And that, that sort of like lights the fire, that you have to just like be like, okay, that's it. Gotta go. Gotta figure out how to do this. And ultimately that really pushed us to fundraise, right? Because before that we had this phase where like, we never thought we were ready, right? We were like, we're not ready. It's not there yet. The product isn't there. The idea isn't there yet. We're not like, we don't sound good enough. Our deck isn't good enough, whatever it is. But all of a sudden, when you are like, okay, it's either I go out and ask for money or I have to go find a job and stop doing this.
Right.
That's when you're like, okay, that's it. I'm just gonna jump. And I think that was our process. And again, it was long. It took time. It wasn't like everything just happened in one day. But that was really the path to how we ended up making it happen. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Rachel, to that.
Yeah. And I think, I want to caveat that we are incredibly lucky that the fund that I was working for decided to support us and kind of give us one of the first checks. Not everybody is sort of, is given that privilege. So I'm very, very appreciative of that. And I totally understand that we were in a position that we could do that. At the same time, it wasn't a given. For a long time, Frida was pushing me like, Rachel, when are we going to talk to BDMI? Rachel, when are we going to talk to BDMI? And I was like, I'm not ready yet. They don't know yet. I don't know. I have to soften them up. And this was over the course of months that I spent sort of talking to them about this project, this thing I was working on that I was excited about, until the point where we were already talking to other investors, had gotten some small sort of angel commitments. And then I went to the fund and was like, hey guys, this is a real thing. I'm going to quit to work on this. I should at least pitch you guys and see what you have to say. And I was not expecting a good outcome, or I was expecting maybe a small check, as a sign of support, so that if we went to other investors, they wouldn't be like, oh, why aren't they investing?
Yeah.
Because that would have killed us, right? To have that negative signal. So I was expecting a very small check, and then, they pulled through, with much more than what I expected. So, like I said, wanted to caveat that for sure. But I will say Frida, quitting her full-time job and getting started, we would not have been able to fundraise or get any commitments from anyone had one of us not been full-time on the business. And that's to anyone who asks whether they can fundraise or start a business while they're part-time. If you're building something that you can monetize easily, sure, absolutely. Do it part-time and then quit once it's making enough revenue to support yourself. If that's not a possibility, which for us it wasn't, we knew we were going to be pre-revenue for a while, we had to jump. We had to take that risk.
That's huge. I mean, it's to know that you're going all in. It's such a massive decision. Yeah. All right. So on that subject of money, you raised your pre-seed round at $1.2 million. That's pretty respectable for a pre-revenue company. And you've already given us a little bit about the story of that. If there are any other details that you'd love to fill in about your funding journey or anything that you would do differently, we'd love to hear that.
Yeah. We weren't just pre-revenue. We were pre-product at the time. We had nothing. We had no wait list. We had no products. But we had put together a pretty strong team. And I think tying it back to the story, I think, like you said, as a founder, you're always like, I'm not ready. I don't is this not going to be a home run? How do I do this? And one of our sort of mentors, who is, himself in venture, I remember he just gave us one of these pep talks one day. He just got on the phone with us and he's like, guys, that's it. You need to go, you need to start raising, and you need to first go to people who know you. Go pitch the people, from Goldman, go pitch the people, from BDMI, because if, you need to figure out, those people are the ones who should be supporting you.
Right.
If they can't support you, then you need to start asking yourself questions about, is this viable? And am I the right person to do this? And so, that was a good wake up call. And so that's when I started. I actually reached out to my former managing director from Goldman. His name was Apanjan, who I worked with. I worked under him for a couple of years. And I was so scared. I remember I even told him on the call, I'm so nervous to pitch this to you right now. I'm just going to do it. And I pitched it to him and he was excited. He ended up actually being our first investor. He was like, I'm going to commit. And it was initially a small amount, which he ended up increasing afterwards. Yes. But that was really it. And then all of a sudden, when you, as a founder also, it's pretty cool. You're okay, someone who knows me very well, who I worked for, believes in me, believes in my work. And that's an amazing thing. And it's also an amazing signal. And I think from there, we sort of were able to move forward and start with it started just snowballing really slowly. And then I think the other part was, like Rachel mentioned before, we were super lucky to have Rachel. And not just because she, her fund contributed, but because Rachel was sort of a boss and knew so many people in VC and knew how things were run. And she knew how to say the right things. And she coached me and she was like, well, this is what VCs need to hear. And these are the things we need to have. And And that was amazing. I think that was a huge part of it and helped us like get connections faster.
Rachel, do you want to tack on to that?
Yeah, I think it's very easy to see the sea of funds that are out there and want to talk to all of them that want to talk to you. But one of the things that I told Frida early on is we might be getting connections to high flyer names, but I know for a fact that they don't invest as early as we were. And so I wanted to limit the number of conversations we were having with those folks. One, to just limit the number of rejections. And two, because it just takes so much freaking time to get on a call with all these people. And I know that like our time was just way better spent building the business. And so I try to focus us very, very, very strongly on who are like the people who just do first checks, who do pre-seed rounds, who are open to going that early. Because we could have had a lot more conversations than we did with folks that I knew would have just been fishing, or at least, wanted to build a relationship early on so that, come the next round or Series A or whatever, they would have already known us. But I think like for me, I know that game because I played that game and I was doing that myself. I was trying to meet those companies that were earlier than where BDMI would invest. And, it's good for the funds. It's just more time consuming. You have to be we still took those calls, but we took way fewer of them than I think maybe other companies might.
Gotcha. I think we could continue this conversation for another 6 to 7 hours.
Somewhere around there.
Because
getting dinner later.
the breadth and depth of your all's experience, I mean, even so far is really just amazing. But unfortunately, we are coming up, getting close to time. So I want to move us forward. Hey, maybe we'll have you back sometime to check up on everything. So what is next for Debbie?
Next is nailing product. That is what we need to do. I think our job right now is we did good. We made promises. We got users. We built a community. We built an audience. We have the starting capital. And now our job is to like make good on that promise. And that making good on that promise is not a month-long thing, and it's not a 3-month-long thing. And it's going to be probably the rest of our journey with Debbie is going to be that, constantly figure that out. But I think at least initially, like we want to start having like that. We want to start being able to say, hey, we are actually adding value to people's lives. And we're close to there. I think we are. But there's a lot of work that we still need to do to get there. And so we're really trying to right now, our every single day is like focusing on, figuring out what user issues are and like getting feedback from users, trying to help them out, trying to think about what the next set of features will be, analyzing existing features and like what we can tweak about them, how we can make them better. And for me, honestly, that's the funnest part. Like that's really what I dreamt, like building a startup would be. I'm like, this is it. We're going to build a product. There's all this other stuff, which is fun too, to an extent, but this is the funnest.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's that.
And I would say like the thing that really sort of like put it over the edge for me was like 7 days ago was the first day that we took a look at the streaks. So every month, basically our users, they have a goal to hit in terms of their debt. And sort of we evaluate that as a part of a 6-month, 7-month streak. And so April 1st was the first day that we finally had that data because we've only had users for, a month or so.
Yeah.
And seeing people kind of complete their streaks, us paying them for, actually getting that done was just such a good feeling. And such a good, like, that's sort of the feeling that I want us to continue is like being able to reward folks for doing the right thing.
Yeah. Watching everything kind of come together has to be like the primo feeling. After all of this work. Okay, so we are dangerously close to time out over here. So I'm going to ask you both the same question, my favorite question of the day. And let's start with Rachel. What is your advice for entrepreneurs in general?
My advice for entrepreneurs, if they don't already have a co-founder, get one. If you already have one, cherish them. They are your accountability partner. Buy them presents. They're your accountability partner. They are your rock. They will help you, think about ideas, bounce ideas off each other. A lot of times entrepreneurs will have very high egos and they need to kind of get far. as self-starters, but it's very humbling to have someone else at the end of the table who complements you, who has a different skill set, who can add something to that pot. So that's my number one piece of advice. And I don't necessarily mean technical. I mean someone who you trust, who you think is a good person,
and someone who listens to your venting.
Yes. The vent partner. You need one.
Well, Rachel also listens to my venting all the time. Rachel and Maxime, we have like half of our stand-ups are just venting.
You gotta have it. You gotta have it. All right, Rachel. Anything else?
Nope.
Good.
That's
right.
My number one thing.
Perfect. Frida, the same question to you. What's your advice for entrepreneurs? I don't know how to ask that question differently.
No, it's a great question. I think my advice is ask yourself, would you still be doing what you're doing if you were like completely anonymous, nobody knew it was you, and you got like no credit? The reason why I ask it, not because there's definitely the part about humility and working on a problem that matters and all of these things. But I think also that helps you figure out, like, are you actually working on something that you enjoy? Do you enjoy doing this? Like, is this fun for you? Are you like loving it? Are you, right? Or are you just doing it for the hype? Are you doing it for the thing? Because I think the hype part, it's very up and down, right? Like sometimes you feel like you're on top of the world and everyone loves what you're doing. And you're one of those people who could post on LinkedIn and be like, yeah, we raised, we did this, we did that. But a lot of the time it's not. You're sitting there and you're like, it's just you and whatever you're working on. And you might not get credit for so many things that you're doing. And nobody really knows, like, right? Like, I think maybe co-founders are the closest to knowing, but nobody really knows like how much you really are doing and what you're really doing. Yeah. And I think that's just for me, like been one of the most important things to think about.
Awesome. This is great. I want to thank you both for coming on to the show today. You've both been very great guests.
Lots of fun.
Lots of fun.
Thank you so much, guys. This was amazing.
It's the most I've laughed on an interview, I think, yet. So, gold star.
Nice.
All right. And that's
wonderful.
That's going to be everything for today's show. Thanks for hanging out. Hey, listener, this message goes out to you. Over the past several episodes, I've asked you to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. So I went in to check on your work. And you know what? I realized they make it really hard to leave a review. So here's the plan. In Apple Podcasts, click on Startup Savants. That's us. Then scroll all the way down to the bottom where you'll see a big 5.0. We're pretty proud of that. Right there is where you can leave a review of your own. See? It's all about helping people out. Listeners, we love you. And hopefully you love us too. For tools, guides, videos, startup stories, and so much more, head over to truic.com. That's truic.com, TRUIC.com. See ya.
Bye, y'all.